This is a reading of three folk tales about gold from the traditional mining towns of Paracale and Mambulau, now Jose Panganiban in Camarines Norte. In the first story, is it moving? Sorry, yeah. Okay.
No po, ma'am. Yeah.
Okay, there. Is it okay now?
Yes po. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So, in the first story, documented in 1908, the Gold Carabao and 12 Gold Chicks, the King of Spain granted Filipina Maria Punay permission to recruit men from the province as mga minero, miners, in exchange for a gift of 12 chicks fashioned out of gold. The miners were later astounded to see a golden carabao, gintong damulag, in Maria Punay's gold mine. But when they attempted to cut it up and take it out, the earth shook and water gushed in, killing the workers inside. The gold carabao was never recovered because storms hit with every attempt to pump out the water, and the mine remained flooded. The second story, The Golden Umbrella, also documented the same year, 1908, is about Maria Timbang Palo, who had an umbrella made of gold. When Maria was very rich, she started giving gold away to whoever passed along the river. Masabi ang iba, sana all. When some refused, may mga naghabo. She was so angry and asked them if they were so rich that they did not want to receive her gift. One day, a man who refused the gold challenged Maria to pursue him if she really wanted to give him gold. Nagpahabol, no? So Maria chased after him on a banca and almost drowned because of the river's strong current. Her golden umbrella fell into the river. Lightning struck with every attempt to recover it. May sirena palang naki-star sa golden umbrella. Now, the tale about Maria Timbang Palo is still told in Paracale up to now. But this time, mayo ng golden umbrella. But now, yun lang gintong baka o gintong damulag and a golden hen and its chicks. Pero nag-merge si duwang istorya kang Maria Punay saka Maria Timbang Palo. Paracale natives became greedy and killed the cow to get its gold. Although other versions had Maria Timbang Palo leading it up to the hills, where its blood trickled downhill and seeped into the ground. In another version documented in the Paracale Gold Mini Museum, Maria Timbang Palo disappears and ang nawalat si ferocious fire-breathing golden bull. Ang ngaran, guess what? Ginto. The natives revered Ginto, but a warrior desired to capture it to give to his bride as dowry. This warrior gathered his men to dig a deep and wide trench near the sea to trap the bull. The bull fell into the trap, but when the warriors tried to kill it, the wounded animal resisted, killing all but one of the hunters. The blood of the bull and the warriors mingled and became Paracale's gold. Ginto remained buried deep in the earth's bowels. But later stories locate the bull or the damulag or the cow as being fast asleep beneath the town's church. Every time anyone attempts to dig it up, may kikilat, lightning strikes. The third Maria is Inay Kandi or Nuestra Señora de Candelaria. Inay Kandi was brought by the Franciscan friars in 1611 and is the oldest Marian image in the Bicol region. In the story, Inay Kandi descended from the church to face invading Moros. There are details, such as the date of the attack. Very specific, August 29, 1809, and the Moros being aboard 37 pangkos or boats that were sometimes used for piracy. Inay Kandi brandished her sword and stained the waters red with Moro blood. Big waves assisted her in repelling the Moros. When she returned to the altar, kulang na ng muro. Inay Kandi was missing a finger. In some stories, several fingers. And these could not be reattached to the hand of the image, purposely to remind the people of what had transpired. The story of the image is kept alive in the 2013 coffee table book Inay Kandi, Bearer of Light by Renz Tuzon. Tourism officer of Paracale, Cielo Javier, believes that the story of Inay Kandi replaced Maria Timbang Palo as Paracale's folktale. In recent years, a Pabirik festival has been held during the Paracale Fiesta. It features the mining industry together with Inay Kandi and in street dances like this one in the picture. The street dancers are dressed as parakabud or gold panners, holding not only shovels and pans, but also in some dances, images of Inay Kandi. These dances, available on YouTube, show the gold panners' lives as being beautiful, colorful, and joyful. Although they continue to lead lives as hardworking parakabud, they are happy because Inay Kandi, and in one dance, a priest is with them. There are many ways to read these stories by historians who may want to search for historical basis for the tales, like Luis Derry did that for some Sorsogon tales. We can compare these with other tales of gold from other mining provinces in the country and probe them for feminist and ecological values. I will share with you today only my reading of how the relationship of power evolved in the three tales through the metaphor of the pabirik. The pabirik is the pan used to sift gold from gravel and sand and water from the creeks, from the rivers. I use the metaphor of the pabirik and the gold panning process to describe the transformation of the Generous Maria of the first two folktales to the religious image of Inay Kandi. In the process of panning and sifting out elements of the folktales of Mambulau and Paracale, mining magnate Doña Maria Punay and charitable Maria Timbang Palo somehow metamorphosed into the warlike Amazona image of Inay Kandi. You can see that from her costume in the book by Renz Tuzon. I also relate this with what happened to the gold mining towns. Mambulau and Paracale became known worldwide in past centuries because of the gold in their fields and in their water. Yet, the people remained poor. These former great mining towns are now classified as second and third class municipalities. But the most appalling image of poverty in Paracale today is that of children who are forced to dive for gold through dangerous and illegal compression mining just to provide a decent living for the family. The children squeeze themselves into narrow entrances to dig blindly for gold in deep underground pits, often underwater, breathing through hoses connected to diesel-powered compressors at ground level. The pits sometimes collapse, and the children are exposed to toxic chemicals. So, why did the people remain poor, despite the treasure, the gold in their land and waters, as well as the spiritual riches of their golden faith. Well, these tales, as many of post-colonial scholars would always say, these tales of Maria's gold can be linked to the role of colonization that accompanied religion during the Spanish era. In a conference paper in 2014, Victor Aguilan states that, to quote, Filipinos have been described as meek or maamo, indifferent, walang pakialam, and willing to endure suffering, mapagtiis. He explores the relationship of the long history of colonialism with domination and oppression. He cites the observation of Christology scholars that the image of Christ as Santo Niño, as Nazareno, and as the buried Christ, no, Santo Entierro, were used to teach the Indios the virtues of patience, meekness, and long-suffering, so that they sila malaban against the conquerors. In another draft paper on the theology of struggle, Aguilan also says, Philippine Christianity seems to be inutile in addressing the problems of social injustice, poverty, graft, and corruption in society. There is even a perception that Christianity has tolerated or even supported the status quo. I believe the image of Inay Kandi was put to good use in the anti-Islam campaign of the friars in the Philippines as part of proselytization, Christianization. This calls to mind the role of violence in evangelization, in particular, the erasure of those who do not belong to one's group or one's religion, as during the Crusades, the Holocaust, and now Gaza. An article in a Jesuit journal suggests as much. In a 1572 encyclical, Pope Pius V asked Catholics to ask Mary to help them defeat Muslims and other godless enemies, either through conversion or the sword. Whereas the Jesuits chose to use the images of Mary, the beautiful, to assist them in converting Muslims through beauty and shared devotion, the Dominicans chose to deploy images of Mary as a lady of victory. So you can see on one side, Inay Kandi is like in armor, and you have this on the other side is a very kind, sweet, beautiful lady. Not that the other one is not beautiful, also beautiful. To quote from Rita Turkovich, one of the most shocking images of Mary being used as a weapon against Muslims in this period can be seen in the image emblazoned on the cover of a 17th century pamphlet from a Dominican Rosary confraternity in Cologne. The image features Mary holding baby Jesus and standing on top of a headless man. The viewer is meant to conclude that the headless man is a Turco, because his turban has rolled to the side. Baby Jesus is holding the dead man's bloody, decapitated head, while Mary is wielding a sword encircled by the rosary. Writing around her body implores her not to ora pro nobis or pray for us, as is normally the case, but punya pro nobis, fight for us. So very militant, no? Around the sword and aligned with the rosary is the line, Shield of Christians, while in the background, one can make out the sinking Ottoman ships of Lepanto, because the Ottoman Empire fell because of eventually fell because of the Battle of Lepanto. And finally, just to be clear, the image and the pamphlet itself is entitled in all caps, Triumphus Sanctissimi Rosarii Mariae, the triumph of the most holy Rosary of Mary. In all the Maria stories and in the contemporary Pabiric festival dances, power has remained in the hands of Spain, the rich, and the Roman Catholic Church. The highlighting of Christian imagery in the later tales may have helped inculcate the values of meekness and obedience in the people in these mining towns, to accept their poverty as well as to rely on the received Christian religion against Islam in Camarines Norte. The mining families of Paracale and Mambulao may have internalized their poverty and suffering because of the values in their folktales and in their religion. They bowed down to the power of Spain and the rich to prevent the Indios' greed to assert the need for natives' endurance, hard work, and suffering in mining for gold. The belief that God will provide, isa Diyos na lamang, and Inay Kandi will not abandon us. In imbibing these values, the people became complicit in their own exploitation and oppression. The colonizers, together with the clergy and the powerful rich, triumphed in rendering the Indios and the Filipinos faithful, the Filipino faithful, meek, and obedient. Unlike the golden bull that resisted all attempts to capture it, they allowed themselves to be led by the nose and accept their bitter fate as an abject and suffering people. Maria, Inay Kandi, would save them after all, whether from the Moros or from poverty. My reading of these tales from two Bicol towns famed for gold reveals the need to deepen the study of the relationship of religion and inequality in society. In his conference paper, Aguilan concludes that the teaching of Christianity should be transformed, including the images of Christ as a meek and suffering God, so that the image becomes more relevant and help the many. This may not be easily realized in a region which has the highest proportion of Roman Catholics in the country, at 93.5% of its household population. Dose and Adyong of the UP Decolonial Studies program state that the project of decolonizing religion may just be wishful thinking, because while former colonies were permitted to obtain sovereignty and statehood, coloniality has continued to exist through power relations, ideology, institutions, and other practices. This reading of folk tales of Camarines Norte reveals only the tip of a gargantuan socio-economic system, but it can serve as a catalyst for a multidisciplinary study of the role of colonization as well as religion in Cabicolan's poverty and culture, particularly in the traditional mining provinces. Teachers, ecologists, scholars of the natural and social sciences, clergy, and cultural workers can work together to mine the related issues, to gather knowledge and truth about why Cabicolan is the poorest region in Luzon, despite its rich natural resources. They can share their findings with and make recommendations to policymakers. Even if these policymakers do not listen, they likely will not. Those in academe and the arts will still have the data and analysis for advocacy, and these can be used to raise the consciousness of the youth and students to persist in the work of reshaping culture. Now, I'm conscious that this may be a sensitive topic for some in the audience, since it challenges the faithful to examine the dangerous intersection of faith and colonialism, showing how religious iconography can be directed to inculcate blind obedience and misplaced devotion. I take my lead from a Jesuit, Father Dorian Llewellyn, president of the Institute for Advanced Catholic Studies at the University of Southern California, who wrote in 2022 about how Mary has been marshaled for religious nationalism and military campaigns. This is in Ukraine. Perhaps the progressives in the church and in society can give the pabirik of these folk tales another swirl, another agitation, this time to help open the people's eyes to the truth about mining and social inequality, plus the ecological impacts, of course. This should be done not only in Camarines Norte, but also in other mining communities. In the severely deforested and mined-out province of Masbate, the island of Rapu-Rapu in Albay, and in the communities of the Paracabud in Caramoan, Camarines Sur. There is a great need to transform the culture of the town, province, region, and country to resist the exploitation and oppression of the rich and powerful, whether in business, politics, or religious institutions. These tales of Maria can therefore be turned anew toward a more liberating, just, and ecological discourse. For example, the story of Maria Timbang-Palo could be resurfaced, not to distribute ayuda like the politicians do, but to uplift those who labor for a pittance. Inay Kandi, like our own Ina Inaga, is adorned with glittering gold clothes. What if she were alternatively dressed, instead of as a Spanish Moro killing Amazona dressed in gold, which, by the way, she's no longer in Paracale, no? So I noted that. But as a simple Bicolnon and Filipina mother who teaches people that gold is for all and not just for the privileged few, like the flood control contractors. And if the sword has to be there, does it? Then let it be brandished for equality and social justice. The sword has been replaced by the rosary that's supposed to be the sword. So in other words, I'm not, I don't know much about religion and ecclesiastical stuff, and I know it's only Christ that transfigured, but let me use the word. In other words, not only a transformation, but a transfiguration, meaning an exalting, glorifying, or spiritual change of Maria is called for. Then, these tales of gold can finally be the true bulawan to uplift the lives of the townspeople economically, socially, and spiritually. Just mabalos ko.